Okay, it looks like folks have stopped calling in for a while. So, good evening. I would like to say I am Sarah Samaji, and I'm the Director of Recreation and Community Services for the City of Arcadia. I would like to welcome you to the Town Hall meeting and ask you to bear with us. This is our first virtual Town Hall meeting, so I'm going to be doing a number of things here, so you might not see my focus 100% of the time in the camera, but don't worry, I will still be on screen for you to see me and hopefully see our presentation in just a little bit. Before we begin the presentation tonight, we have a bit of housekeeping to do. So I am going to actually start sharing my screen to start the presentation. And there we go. So hopefully you can all see that. So again, welcome to the Town Hall meeting on Homeless Resource Hub. And so because we have 3 or more city council members attending this meeting becomes an official meeting. So before we begin, I'd like to officially call this meeting to order at 6:04 p.m. And for the record, I'd like to acknowledge the city council members in attendance. So please say here to confirm you're in attendance when I call your name. Mayor Pro Tem Shote.
Yeah.
Councilmember Tom Beck. We'll come back to Councilmember Tom Beck. Okay, I'll go on to Councilmember Paul Chang.
Here.
Councilmember April Verlato.
Here.
And do we have Councilmember Tom Beck off of mute yet to say here?
I'm here. I don't think I've muted myself.
Okay, so you're here. Yes, we can. Thank you very much. And also in attendance this evening, if you'd like to say hello, we have Dominic Lazaretto, Arcadia City Manager.
Good evening, everybody. Thanks for coming.
Of course, myself, Sarah Samaji, and we also have Candace Chung, the Assistant Director of Recreation and Community Services for the City of Arcadia. Candace? Perhaps she's muted, so I know she's here though. We also have with us tonight Eric Deermeyer from Union Station's Homeless Services. He's the manager for the San Gabriel Valley Cities. Eric?
Hello, everybody. Thank you for letting us be here.
And last but not least, we also have Sean Morrissey from Union Station's Homeless Services. He's Director of Advocacy and Community Engagement. Sean?
Hi, everyone. We're honored to be here. Thanks for having us.
Well, thank you all for joining us this evening. So we're going to have opportunities for comments and questions. I'll review on how this works, and then we'll also review it again at the conclusion of the presentation. So again, bear with us. This is a Zoom presentation, of course. It's a webinar style, so that's why you can see the panelists, but not all the participants here. So if you have comments or questions, there should be a Q&A section where you can type your questions into the Q&A, or if you have a comment, you can also raise your hand to speak or ask a question. If you're a phone caller, you can press *9 to be placed in the queue to speak. And we're gonna, you can start asking your questions or providing your comments as we go along through the presentation. However, we promise we'll get to all the questions and comments at the end of the presentation, as well as read some public comments that we have received from earlier today.
And Sarah, while you're transitioning to that, sorry, just want to be clear because a question had already come up. All the participants are automatically on view. We're in presentation only mode tonight, but you will have a chance to speak at the end if you'd like to. So anybody that wants to can raise their hand and we'll tell you how to do that at the end.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dominic, for providing that information and also reiterating that for our patrons this evening. So how do we get here? So homelessness in Arcadia, what you're seeing now is our point in time count data. And perhaps you don't know, but we work in collaboration with LAHSA. And if you don't know what LAHSA is, that's the Los Angeles Homeless Service Authority and the City of Arcadia, along with community volunteers, go out into the community, which is divided up into grids, and count the number of individuals experiencing homelessness in the city. And this same process also happens throughout the San Gabriel Valley and surrounding LA communities all at the same time. So individuals, therefore, aren't necessarily counted twice on the same night. So you can see Arcadia's trends. We go all the way back to 2015 here, and our number was 22, and then in 2016 we dropped to 12, and then 14, and then 15. And I think the years that we were 12, 14, and 15, we all knew that those numbers were inaccurate because what we saw here in Arcadia was a lot different than those numbers were reflecting. So we worked with LASA and our community volunteers, and then hence in 2019, we saw the number rise to 77. And then for year 2020, the number jumped to 106. And we think that's a more accurate representation of how many individuals experiencing homelessness are actually in the city of Arcadia. And just to talk a little bit about what these numbers actually mean and what they do for us is all the grant funding for homelessness is directly correlated to the number of individuals experiencing homelessness in our community. So if you go back to 2018, when we had 15 individuals experiencing homelessness, that's actually the year that we started applying for the grant, but you needed a minimum of 25 individuals experiencing homelessness to be able to qualify for any of the funding. So we actually had to partner with the city of South Pasadena and try to collaborate and work together to actually receive any of those funding. Since then, since our number has gone up, we have received additional opportunities to receive additional funds, all by our baby self or all on Arcadia's own. And that's what we're going to be here talking about, some of those grants and some of the additional funds that we received later today. And in the event that you're interested, we're also preparing for our 2021 homelessness count or point in time count in January 2020. So if any of you are interested in volunteering for that, please let me know. We're always looking for more volunteers. Sorry, under the technical difficulties, there we go. So since some of you perhaps are outside of Arcadia city limits, I also wanted to provide some data on what's happening in Supervisor District 5, because I can't pull the data for those specific areas like I can for the city of Arcadia. So I really just want you here to focus on the highlighted areas, and you'll see all persons who are unsheltered and sheltered in Supervisor District 5, with over 7,200 individuals experiencing homelessness. And if you look at the next line there, further down on that same graph, it shows that number is up 24%, and that's a significant increase from the prior year. So the trends that we saw go up with the point in time count in Arcadia isn't just exclusive to Arcadia, it isn't just exclusive to Supervisor District 5 or LA County, it's exclusive to the whole area in general. So next I just want to talk a little bit about Martin v. the city of Boise. And what we commonly hear is, why don't we just move the tents out of the area? Or why don't we just arrest folks who are homeless? And perhaps some of you don't know why that doesn't happen. So first, I would like to just start off by saying homelessness is not a crime. It's not a crime to be homeless. And so you can't just arrest somebody for the mere fact of being homeless. And, sorry, I just lost my screen. We can't just move the tents out of the area because we can only, sorry, I'm sorry, I'm going to start over again. Okay, we can't arrest our way out of homelessness, and we can't move the tents out of the area unless we have enough shelter beds for all the individuals. And I don't mean all the individuals who are experiencing homelessness, but all the individuals that we have in our point in time count. So if you go back to Arcadia's numbers and you think Arcadia had 106 individuals experiencing homelessness, then Arcadia would need to provide 106 shelter beds to house those areas, not just house the 5 people that you perhaps see in a tent living next to your specific area where you live, or living on the wash, or living in Arcadia Park, we would need to have enough shelter beds. So this case kind of bounced around in the courts, and what you see on the slide before you is the cases, but what it boils down to is, according to the court, the government cannot criminalize indigent homeless people for sleeping outdoors or on public property on the false premise that they have a choice in the matter. So I just wanted to provide a little history because I hear those questions quite a bit. Okay, so city resources spent on homelessness. So the city's budget is based off a fiscal year basis, and it starts in July and it runs through June 30th of the following year. So this shows what the city has spent on homelessness up through October. So for July, August, September, and October, 4 months. And each month the city spends nearly $70,000 addressing homelessness. This is not preventative measures, but merely addressing concerns as they arise. What we've seen in the past 5 years are those numbers with individuals experiencing homelessness continue to rise. And our numbers for what we're spending are rising with that. And we're not even addressing the problem. We're just putting Band-Aids on the problem as we kind of go along in our routine business through all the different departments. So this is why we want to help reduce the negative impact to the neighborhood by providing proactive services such as the Resource Hub. And you'll see that staff spent nearly 1,000 hours for the first 4 months addressing homelessness in the city of Arcadia, and a total of $277,000. And again, that's not proactive measures, that's merely reactive measures. So addressing homelessness. The Homeless Resource Hub is implemented to address homelessness in the area. We've heard time and time again of reports of individuals experiencing homelessness in this area, and we continue to hear it in the letters that we receive that there's a problem. We too hate the problems that you're having in this area with homelessness, and we too hate homelessness. We wish it would go away, and that's what we're here to try to help. But what we've discovered is if we do nothing to get in these areas where there is an issue, then the issues continue to happen. And all the correspondence I mentioned that we received, that there is definitely a problem in this area. And the problem has been in this area not since the Homeless Resource Hub started, but it's been in this area for a much longer time. So that's one of the reasons that we chose that area to try to address the problem where people are actually at. So we want to continue to work in a proactive capacity versus a reactive capacity, because if we don't reduce the negative impacts of homelessness, then nothing will change. So what you're seeing here is, for you that you hopefully can see, is a screenshot from one of our security cameras at the Homeless Resource Hub. So perhaps you've been asking yourself, how did the Homeless Resource Hub start? And so this location was chosen after careful consideration. We thought about a lot of different locations, but again, we were hearing that there was issues in this area and along the Santa Anita Wash Trail, and the data that we had from our point in time counts. And this happens to be on city property. And I've also been asked, why wasn't it placed on the other side of the wash over near Peck Park? And unfortunately, that is county property. And so we don't unfortunately have jurisdiction over county property, or I've also heard the Arcadia County Park. And because the timelines for this grant were so short, we only have till May to utilize the funds for this pilot program grant that we received for $150,000. Every day that we spent trying to work with the county or trying to secure a different location outside of city property was money actually going down the drain and not to address homelessness here. So you'll see the Resource Hub. It's located right near the Santa Anita Wash Trail on the par 3 golf course parking lot property. I'm going to move to my next slide. So what do we do at the Resource Hub? This picture shows what an average day looks like in operation while the Resource Hub is up and operating. The Resource Hub hours of operations are typically on Thursdays from 9 to 3 with some exclusions for the holidays. And the Resource Hub is in a fenced-in area with multiple security cameras, and those cameras are being watched by staff and the police department. And we also have 2 different trailers on site. One's a shower trailer with 8 showers, and one's the washer and dryer trailer with 6 units of each. We have a porta potty, and then we have 2 Union Station housing navigators or case managers on site. We also work with a fire department medic on site, and they are trying to be proactive to provide wound care and other medical needs. So little problems don't turn into bigger problems and folks don't end up in the ER. We also have donated food, water, and clothing, and Wi-Fi and charging stations. And I should add that the Wi-Fi is only turned on during the operation of the Resource Hub. It's not turned on at other times, so we can avoid individuals hanging out at the location unnecessarily. We also have hygiene kits to provide, flu shots, and COVID testing we had out there last week. And then we've also been collaborating with a lot of different organizations, and you're going to hear a little bit about that later. But we've been especially working with Santa Anita Wash Trail in LA County to try to have the adjacent trail cleaned up more often so we can keep our area and your area nice and clean. And so this picture again is just a typical day of what the Resource Hub looks up and operating. I could talk a little bit more about the operation in general, and here's some more photos of the operation. So check-in is located right along the trail side. It's actually outside of the Resource Hub, and we do temperature checks and provide hand sanitizers to individuals prior to entering. Next, you'll see our fire department medic providing services to one of our participants. The next picture you'll see is one of our Union Station housing navigators or case managers working with one of the clients. And next, you'll see what a typical meal looks like that is provided. Here's some additional pictures of operation. Next, you'll see the inside of one of our shower trailers and our laundry trailer. The folks sitting around the circle are actually social distancing, charging their cell phones and using the Wi-Fi. And then another gentleman is looking for some of the clothes that we have. And in our 5 days of operation to this point, we've served 90 individuals, provided 57 showers, did 61 loads of laundry, provided first aid to 15 individuals, given away 52 items of clothing, 66 hygiene kits, and 88 meals have been distributed. And the most important was 51 individuals, that's over half of our population, have been to visit Union Station housing navigators and case managers to be connected to services. And although we have all these other bright and shiny things happening at the Resource Hub, our main goal of being there is to get folks connected to services. So that's good that they are. In addition to the Resource Hub, Arcadia also applied for and received other grants to do more proactive outreach in the community. So our first grant we received was for $20,000, and that's for additional encampment cleanups around the area. We also received another full-time housing navigator or case manager from Union Station, and that's how we have 2 individuals down at the Homeless Resource Hub serving the public. We also received $43,500 in prevention and diversion funds. And these funds are very unique. These funds actually are designed to help individuals and prevent individuals from becoming homeless. And they're so very important these days because we keep hearing about the number of individuals that are struggling with everyday life and all the things that they have lost through COVID. So these funds can actually help pay any type of electrical or bills that they may have to help them stay into their housing, or perhaps even get them, if they're on the streets or in a temporary shelter location, can help get them into housing quicker. It could help pay for credit checks, or it could help pay for housing application fees. And now more than ever, like I said, these are really important funds. So we wanted to try to get as much of those funds as we could. So we actually partnered with the city of La Cañada Flint Ridge, so we can actually increase the number of funds that we had for Arcadia as well. And then we have $40,000 in first responder outreach. And so this is so our police department and our fire department can proactively engage with individuals experiencing homelessness. An example of how these funds are being used is right at the resource hub where we have the fire department medic. That is being paid for out of another portion of the grant to provide that service to individuals. And then last but not least, we have $50,000 in emergency homeless resources. And our first responders and housing navigators have access to these funds, and they can use them as they see fit to help an individual experiencing homelessness on the spot, with whatever they may need. Sorry, I got a little tongue-tied there.
Hey, Sarah, before you go on, we should remind everybody that all this funding comes from Measure H, which was voted in by the people of Los Angeles County because everybody identified that homelessness was becoming an issue throughout the county. And these are our local sales tax dollars that are coming back to us to provide services. Prior to Measure H, we had no funding. Prior to Measure H, we kind of, for lack of a better term, we kind of pretended we didn't have a problem. We hoped we could either arrest our way out of it or encourage people to find another place outside the city. And Measure H makes it possible for us to be proactive to address the problem rather than being just reactive like you were talking about the money we're spending outside of the grant.
Yes, thank you, Dominic. And next, I'm going to turn the presentation over to Eric Niermeyer from Union Station Homeless Services to talk about who we're serving and where they are from. Eric?
Thank you, Sarah. So again, my name is Eric Niermeyer. I'm the manager for San Gabriel Valley City's contracts with Union Station Homeless Services. I directly supervise and provide in the field, on the ground support for our Arcadia Housing Navigator. And I have been at these events weekly since they've started myself. So what we are seeing for who is receiving these services, because homelessness is a local issue, it's a city issue, it's a county issue, it's regional. The individuals that are receiving these services are overwhelmingly Arcadia residents. They were either born and raised themselves in Arcadia, they went to school here, they have family here, they've got their mail that they're picking up here, they work in Arcadia or nearby. So these are people that are already in our backyards. This is their backyard. And we are trying to meet the need, providing the crisis resource where the crisis is. So these are Arcadia residents that we have helped to connect with medical providers, providing medication refills, help set appointments, get people back on track to resume services, whether it's medical or mental health services. We've, depending on the individual situation, we've provided referrals and coaching for employment, assistance applying for financial benefits if it's maybe a senior who's not able to work because of disability or just because of age or some other issue. We provide assistance navigating this really complicated system of financial benefits. We help replace the vital personal documents that are kind of the crucial first step before you could even get a job, get an apartment, get really any government assistance. We help connect individuals to interim and permanent housing resources. And as we go through that process, we walk through every step of the journey with them. And it's going to bring up a lot of barriers that are going to kind of make us aware of like why these individuals are experiencing homelessness in the first place. Some of that might be they need assistance clearing up legal issues, navigating other county barriers, things like that. So we've got this huge pool of resources in our back pocket that we provide to our clients, and we walk through every step of the journey with them. Our trauma-informed staff provide much-needed peer support at these events and assistance navigating community, state, and federal resources, like I mentioned. These vulnerable Arcadia residents have received COVID-19 testing, flu vaccines, wound care, other health resources from both the Arcadia Fire Department and county DHS partners. These clients, like I said, they're vulnerable Arcadia seniors for the most part, disability, or folks with disabilities, Survivors of trauma, a lot of this trauma is ongoing, and if you haven't experienced that trauma, you can't fully understand how the implications are going to play out in every aspect of your life, your personal relationships, your employment, your housing, and we help provide that support and that non-judgmental, trauma-informed peer support and presence through whatever it is our clients are going through. And can we go to the next slide? So this is the impact. During the pandemic, many resources have been shut down, including those that are most relied upon by our unhoused neighbors. Libraries, restaurants, parks, schools, no one has been unaffected, especially those without housing. And we see that time and time again. As a case manager myself, as a supervisor, I've seen that our clients can't charge their phone. If they can't charge their phone, they can't return the phone call for an employment opportunity. They can't follow up with a landlord if they don't have a printer to print out an application and get a copy of their social security card and things like that. With these public resources shut down, many people have nowhere else to go, and any problems that they would have experienced outside of this pandemic in quote unquote normal times is that much more exacerbated. And so this is one very helpful, super concrete thing that we can do as a community to help shore up your own neighbors that are experiencing hard times. This has also been a safe place for our neighbors to experience community with each other, to experience a stranger acknowledge their dignity and to provide hope to them. We've seen it ourselves just at these events. Like Sarah showed a picture of individuals charging their phones and sitting around each other. A lot of times that sitting around in silence turns into conversation, that turns into laughter. People have brought their dogs and it just brings smiles to people's faces. They start cracking jokes and telling stories. We're on a first name basis with a lot of the clients that come in and they recognize us. And I can't emphasize, if you haven't lived this experience yourself or worked alongside individuals who are experiencing that, that is huge. It's huge to just reinforce someone's basic human dignity. And I think, and I like to hope that we're all like on the same page, like we all have the best intentions. We might just have disagreements about how to, carry out our best intentions, but this is one of the best highlights from my personal experience, seeing the community that's forming just in the last 5 or 6 weeks. So these are the agencies that have already shown up, already been at this event. Obviously ourselves, Union Station Homeless Services, LAHSA staff, and that's a huge organization. There's a lot of different teams that come by. We've seen multiple LAHSA teams, outreach teams come by and use the resource for their own clients that are Arcadia based. Department of Health Services has been by, Department of Mental Health, obviously providing mental health support, but even assisting with more long-term housing applications. Temple City Coalition for the Homeless, a number of local churches and other nonprofit partners in the community. So I'm going to hand it off to Sean.
Thank you, Eric. Thank you, Sarah. Thanks everyone for being here. Thank you for having us, and to all of the folks attending. I just want to thank everybody for being here, because I know you're here because you love your community, you care about your neighbors. I love what Eric was talking about, and I'm going to try to build on that a little bit and help identify your neighbors as not only the folks that live in houses next to you, but the folks who are struggling and many times forced to live outside under conditions and circumstances beyond their control. My name is Sean Morrissey. I'm the Director of Advocacy for Union Station Homeless Services. So I come to you in that capacity, but perhaps more importantly, as a formerly homeless man who spent a long time out on the street experiencing street homelessness, many years of problematic, untreated drug use, and my own mental health struggle and issues, which perhaps I will get into a little bit. I wanted to cover some of the myths around homelessness. This is perhaps something that people already know. Perhaps there's information here that you don't know. I think that for too long we have mistaken the folks who are experiencing the problem as having created the problem. And I think that this part of the presentation is an effort to help humanize the people who are forced to live outside. I like referring to our brothers and sisters who are sleeping outside as unhoused neighbors, as opposed to this kind of lumping together of the homeless or homeless, because I think when we do that, we lose individuals in that. And I think that we have in these myths that we've bought into and the narratives that we offer around homelessness, what we've really done is betrayed the complexity of the problem, and we've lost the humanity of the individuals who are actually living a nightmare and a trauma by having to live outside. So myth one is that most of the people experiencing homelessness come from outside of our communities to take advantage of services, or in some cases the weather. That's often talked about in terms of Los Angeles or Southern California. And the reality of that is that only about 5% of folks who are homeless have come from other areas or other states. And statistically, those folks may come for a while, but for the most part, usually end up going back to where they came from. As Eric was talking about 95% of the people experiencing homelessness were either residents here, grew up here, worked here, their parents lived here, they went to school here. In more and more cases, as we're seeing the senior homelessness grow, they retired here. And a lot of folks have really just been priced out of their communities and their housing by rent increases. People tend to become homeless in the areas that they lived in and stay in those areas because they're familiar with it. It's what they know. They tend not to venture outside of other areas. And again, if they do, statistically, it's been shown that they go back to the areas that they either grew up in or became homeless in. We also work under something called the Homeless Management Information System, HMIS, and that identifies folks where they're receiving services in the county. So if someone shows up in an area and they're run through the system, they're identified as being on a housing track or working with services in another area and are helped back into that area to reconnect with those services. Because the way that this is set up now is that you have one group that's working with you and one housing track. So you can't be connecting to several different services in different cities. It just doesn't work that way. And we do that because we really want to serve the folks who are most vulnerable in our own communities and prioritize them for housing. Go ahead, Sarah. Myth number two, so many of the people experiencing homelessness are on the streets because they are service resistant or because they choose to live on the streets. And I often say this, it seems to be somewhat of a controversial statement. It's not to me because it's been my experience, but in the almost 17 years that I've been doing this work, mostly at the street and field level, the direct service level, I have yet to meet a single person, and I've worked with thousands of folks experiencing homelessness. I have yet to meet a single person who would choose to live on the street rather than accept their own apartment, have their own bedroom, their own kitchen, their own bathroom. It just hasn't happened yet. I've never met an individual who would rather be on the street than in their own home or apartment. And I'll qualify that by saying that oftentimes we come up with that idea that people are choosing to live on the street because they're refusing perhaps to go into shelters. They're refusing perhaps to go into treatment programs. And oftentimes shelters, and I'll be the first to say this, and even though I think we've got a very good one at Union Station Homeless Services, shelters can be hectic, chaotic places. They can be triggering and exasperating of conditions that people have. And personally, as a formerly homeless man, I chose not to go into shelters. It wasn't something that I could personally tolerate. And so I think that what we've traditionally, for the past 50 years in homeless services, is we have not offered people homes. We've offered them crisis shelter, emergency shelter. We've never offered them places to stay that they can call a home. We've only been doing that for the past 10 years here in Los Angeles County. And when you offer someone a home, the dignity of a home, their own key, that they can open the door and lock their own bathroom, they always say yes to that, always. What we haven't been offering is that. And now, of course, we have a huge housing shortage, so there's even less of it to offer. The majority of people experiencing homelessness in San Gabriel Valley have been assessed by case managers. They're qualified for housing. People have said yes to housing. We call them housing waiting because there's just not enough housing out there. So I would say across our valley that about 90% of the people who are experiencing homelessness are connected to some sort of services, are in our systems, but the backlog has nothing to do with their willingness to move off of the street. The backlog has to do with the lack of housing stock. We have hundreds of people who are holding housing vouchers who are sleeping outside that cannot find apartments, even with us helping them try to find those. About 75% of housing vouchers expire before people can find a landlord to accept them. And that's not due to a lack of willingness. It's just the bare facts that we don't have the housing at this point. Go ahead, Sarah. Myth number 3, those experiencing homelessness are either mentally ill, on drugs, or criminals. The number one reason given for people experiencing homelessness is job or income loss. 835 people experiencing homelessness in San Gabriel Valley are 55 or older. Again, seniors are the largest growing population of those likely and are becoming homeless in our communities. Again, most people experiencing homelessness is the result of income loss, rents are on the rise, and more people are being priced out of their communities. Specifically people who are on disability benefits or seniors with static incomes that can't keep up with rising rents. More people fall newly into homelessness each year than are housed. And I want to throw out a kind of crazy statistic. Don't quote me on the exact numbers, but within about 1,000, I'm in the ballpark. We have done more to house homeless folks in the past year and the past couple years than we've done in the history of homelessness. In Los Angeles County last year, we were able to permanently house approximately 21,000 people, which is an astronomical number when you think about it. Permanently housed 21,000 people. At the same time, approximately 26,000 people fell newly into homelessness. And I want to identify that these are not people who are just making bad choices in their lives, who have behavioral issues. The lion's share of people falling into homelessness are falling into homelessness as a result of not being able to afford their rents or not being able to access the appropriate services and safety nets that we as a community are supposed to have in place to catch those issues before they result in homelessness. Go ahead, Sarah. The resources are available. If people really wanted the help, they would accept that. I know that not to be true personally in my own experience with homelessness, and I know it even better now, having worked in this field for so long. Again, the majority of people who are unhoused are in our system, are connected to services, and are eagerly awaiting housing. Willingness is not the issue, it is the housing availability. I want to describe how challenging it is for someone who has a substance use issue or a mental health issue, and that is a small segment of folks who are experiencing homelessness, not the greater segment, but those tend to be the most visible folks and the ones that we talk about the most. If you have a substance use issue and you want to avail yourself of treatment, basically what that looks like is you have to find a program that has bed availability that will accept your insurance. You have to call every day to keep your name on the list. If you miss a call, you go back to the end of the line, which means, to Eric's point, that you have to have a working cell phone. And you have to have the wherewithal to call. And I think most folks know that sometimes the willingness and these windows of opportunity are very, very small. But a detox bed can take weeks to get into. A treatment bed, when I first got here and I was homeless, it could take 4 to 6 months to get a treatment bed. It's not much better or much different today in 2020. In 2020, it can take anywhere between 30 and 90 days to get in front of a psychiatrist if you wanted medication. I'm going to share this, another kind of personal story, is that I've been in therapy for a long time. My therapist died suddenly last year, and And then COVID hit, and in September, I thought, it's time for me to get back into therapy. I'm gonna get back into therapy. I've got really good insurance. I started the process of trying to connect with a specific therapy in September. It's mid-December, and I have yet to be able to connect with that therapy. And this is someone who has good insurance and is really adept at navigating these systems, and I am stuck. So imagine what it looks like to be on the street. Therapy or medication or treatment starts to look like a good idea. And even with the help of a skilled caseworker, these systems are so barrier-ridden and broken that they're sometimes nearly impossible to access. So the idea that the resources are out there and the people could just link up to them and receive the help if they wanted to is a complete myth. The systems are broken and impediment-ridden. Go ahead, Sarah. And myth number 5, if we get rid of homeless services, homelessness will disappear. I think that what the Resource Hub really represents is a solution to what you've all in your communities been experiencing for the past 2 years. This actually represents a real proactive, forward-moving effort to help people connect to services, help them link to appropriate health-enhancing, forward-moving community resources, and ultimately get off the street and into housing, where we follow them in and offer ongoing permanent supports. These interventions that we're describing, these housing interventions, have a 97% success rate for folks who are chronic and vulnerably homeless with all sorts of conditions, helping them get off the street into housing and providing the services so that they can settle into themselves, become part of the community, and begin to thrive. So support services, housing solutions, these are part of what you're experiencing with the Resource Hub. This is the beginning of the solution. This is what the solution looks like in Arcadia. And that services reduce homelessness. They don't create more of it, as we've seen. One of the analogies here is, if we were to get rid of a hospital, that wouldn't clear up the, disease or illness in the area. It's the same thing. What we're doing here represents a proactive move to address this and help folks move forward. And I think I have one more slide and then I'll shut up. Again, some of the systemic causes of homelessness. I always think of, mental illness and substance use disorder gets often blamed as being a cause of homelessness. I think of those as symptoms of greater systemic issues. Systemic causes of homelessness include lack of affordable housing, poverty, low-paying jobs, loss of a job or income. Racial disparity plays a huge role in it. And again, the inaccessibility to effective resources and treatment in a community, in a country as rich with resources as ours is. There should never be an example where a substance use disorder or a mental health decompensation results in homelessness. These systems were created and charged with catching these things and addressing them appropriately and effectively before they resulted in homelessness. Some of the threats to housing stability are physical and mental health issues, domestic violence, loss of income, trauma, and of course, addiction. And those are the things that we're looking at when we're talking about preventative measures too, to keep people from falling into homelessness, or to keep folks who are on the street and are now in housing from re-falling back into homelessness. And I'm going to end with just this little story that I found very helpful at the beginning of my career, that has to do with a village and a river that runs through the village. And one day the villagers are outside and they notice that there are babies floating down the river. And one villager runs into the river and the villagers say to him, what are you doing? He said, I'm saving these babies. I'm taking these babies out of the river. And another villager runs into the river and the villagers say, what are you doing? He says, we can't get them out of the river fast enough. I'm teaching them how to swim, while the other person is removing them from the river. And then one villager starts running away from the river and heading up toward the mountain. And the villagers say, "What are you doing? Where are you going?" And he says, "I'm going to the top of the river to figure out who's throwing these babies in the river." And I think that that is what we're really charged with doing, is going to the top of the river, figuring out what created homelessness, because individuals didn't create it. Broken systems, failed systems, and barrier-ridden systems not only created it, but perpetuated it. And that's our work as service providers. That's our work as community members and elected officials. And I think that's what the Resource Hub really represents. Thank you.
Thank you, Sean. And I would like to especially thank you for sharing your personal story. Before we move forward, though, can I ask you or Eric to just discuss a little bit about how it's beneficial to see the same individuals at the same location, perhaps week after week for our returning clients, versus if you're working as a housing navigator and you want to see those same 12 to 15 to 20 individuals, how that would work if the Resource Hub was not there, and then how it would be to try to connect those individuals to these services through this broken system that you're talking about. Perhaps Eric, you could take that one.
Sure. So there's countless number of reasons why an appointment with a client might fall through. And like Sean was saying, we can't blame the individual. We have to blame the fact that they're in this situation where every day they're trying to survive. They are trying to either escape physical violence or some other type of violence. They're either trying to find food, find enough money to buy a new sleeping bag because someone stole their bag or something like that. There's lots of reasons why a client might not show up. Good chunk of the time, it's because, like we mentioned, they don't have a phone, or the phone is not able to charge because they don't have access to electricity. This hub takes care of all of those reasons why a client might not show up. If the client is hungry, they can come and get some food. If they need to do laundry, they could do it there. If they need a shower, they could do it there. If they need to charge their phone, they could do it there. If they need to be seen by a doctor to get a vaccine, to talk to their caseworker, to have someone utilize a laptop on behalf of them to apply for a housing resource, they could do it all there. And they could start at 9 and stay there all day and clock and hang out in a safe place where they know no violence will happen to them at that day. They know that they don't have to have people spit at them. They don't have to have people steal their belongings, yell at them. They don't have the police harassing them for sitting on a curb somewhere. It's a consistent place where we can show up every day and the clients know to find us there. And if for some reason something happens, maybe an illness or something one week, they know the next week they can come back and they could see us there. So it's amazing from my own personal perspective that in the 5 or 6 weeks that we've been doing this, we've already made so much progress with the number of people that we've encountered. Just imagine if this resource was a lot more common, if it was more long lasting, like how much would we address the upstream cause of homelessness, like Sean was talking about. You can't build a house in a day. For the most part, you can't demolish a house in a day. If there's a problem, it takes time to build up to it. If you're trying to get rid of a problem, it takes time to address it. So like Sarah was hinting at, like, this is a great resource for us as caseworkers too. Like, in order to do the work that we're trying to do, we can meet up with other caseworkers. Like, we are a nonprofit. We're not clinicians for the most part. We're not legal professionals, but we can reach out to our partners at the Department of Mental Health. We can reach out to a legal team. We can reach out to our partners at the Department of Health Services and have them meet us there and address the client's real concrete needs in person every single week. There were a couple questions on here too. I'm not sure if we wanted to address those yet or.
No, not quite yet. So
okay.
I just wanted to jump in.
If I could just build on, sorry for interrupting. If I could just build on Eric's point on the other side of it, we have a caseworker that comes into the city 3 or 4 days a week that tries to interface with people and has a location at our library. And we have a gentleman who occasionally sleeps at City Hall. And I can't tell you how many times I've called Eric or called Maury, the caseworker, and said, hey, this gentleman's here this morning. You have an opportunity to interface with him if you get down here real quick. And then you try to come into the city, you try to get across the City Hall, and usually by the time you're able to get over here, that person has moved on and I couldn't tell you where they're going. The hub is the exact opposite experience. We open the door and folks that are experiencing homelessness come to us looking for services, looking to get a connection. They feel safe interacting with us on their terms versus us having to send police officers out to interface with them, or even caseworkers, which are a much softer appearance. But to know where people are going to be at a specific given point in time and to interact with them, a lot of times it's hard to find them in the first place. And if you do reach them, they're on the defensive because they're pretty sure you're going to shoo them along versus try to help them. And the hub has changed that dynamic completely in just a few weeks.
Thank you, Dominic. And Sean, once again, thank you for presenting and also for sharing your story once again. So what is our commitment at the hub? Again, we're here to help you. We want to reduce the negative impacts of homelessness to this area. That is our whole point of providing these services in this area, because of the problems that you all have brought to our attention from the number of years that it's been here, and the problem that we can see right along the San Anita Wash Trail with the encampments there as well. So through this process, we're committed to providing the 24-hour surveillance of the hub to keep the location safe and well-maintained and looked after. We are investing additional resources to clean up, to do ongoing cleanup around the hub and encampment cleanups, and to work with those local partners to keep the trails cleaned up. We also want to continue to hear from you and receive that positive engagement from the community. We want to hear what your thoughts are. We want to listen to your concerns and address them. But lastly, we really want to try to work together as a community. And if we do nothing to reduce these negative impacts of homelessness, then nothing will change in this area. And we can keep spending that $70,000 every month to address homelessness and put that Band-Aid on it, or to kick that can down the road, and we can see those numbers increase. So that's really why the hub is here. And last but not least, we're really just here to help you and to help them, and we want to hear from you, and we want to continue to work together through this process. One last thing I'd like to share for you before we start our public comments is we received this letter from a participant at the Homeless Resource Hub back in November. And it says, "Dear staff, I would like to extend my gratitude to all of you for making our lives more bearable while we go through our struggle. All of you are so kind to us, which makes it easier for us to open up and to be able to really voice our needs. I truly see the compassion and feel it as well. I thank you from the bottom of my heart. Stay awesome and stay cool. Sincerely, Rosemary Almendarez." And Rosemary handed us this letter just as she had left, and she asked us not to open it until she walked away. And so we followed her directions and we opened it, and we were all so pleased that we were making a difference in her life. And she was actually pictured here earlier in the presentation as the individual who had received her driver's license, that she worked not only with our housing navigators from Union Station, but LASA team also went down there, and they were able to follow up with her, as Eric had mentioned, and find her in a secure location where they knew where she was going to be. And last week she was just on top of the moon for just getting something which seemed so normal to us, to get your driver's license, but to her it was the best day ever. So we want to say thank you to Rosemary for sharing her kudos for the staff and the individuals working down at the hub, because it is hard work, and we hope to continue to be able to provide that service to her and to the neighborhood. And this concludes our presentation, and now we'll proceed with the public comments. So I'd like to turn the meeting over to Candace Chung to discuss once again the opportunities to provide public comments and share some correspondence that we had received earlier today and this week regarding this meeting. So Candace?
Thank you, Sarah. Just a reminder to those, if you have questions to ask, go ahead and type them in the chat box right below. If you are on the phone and dialed in, you can press *9, and then it will indicate that you have raised your hand, and then we will call on you guys to speak. But before we do that, I have about 20 letters, so I'm going to read and paraphrase through them. so please bear with me. The first one is from the Arcadia Park Residents Group. It attaches our petition to remove the homeless resource hub from Arcadia Part 3. So far, there's about 125 residents here in our neighborhood that have signed it. So here's that. This next letter is from Tracy Perry. These are the reasons we would like the homeless resource hub removed and placed in a different location. Over the last few years, I have seen homelessness grow in my area, and many of them are not mentally well. Tracy's listed about 6 different incidents of homelessness in her neighborhood, but I believe Tracy is on this call also, so she'll have the opportunity to speak. But she wants to help the homeless, but she's concerned that the area will become another homelessness encampment in the area. I want City Council and the mayor to understand what is already occurring in our neighborhood. As you know, my neighbor Mark and I started a petition, and we hope you will strongly consider relocating the homeless resource hub to where it currently is located. And again, that's from Tracy Perry. Next letter is from Scott Chamberlain. The San Gabriel Valley Consortium on Homelessness wants to thank you for your courage and leadership to support the homelessness resource hub in your community. As a resident of San Gabriel Valley, I understand some concerns that neighbors may have. However, those concerns have been addressed with the resource hub. The consortium is committed to working with Arcadia. This next letter is from Susan and Mark Botker. They live on Hempstead Avenue since 1986. Up until a few years ago, it has always been a friendly and safe neighborhood. We have always enjoyed walking and biking along the Santa Anita Wash. However, as more homeless have been allowed to camp in the wash by the golf course, we have seen an increase in tent camping, crime, aggressive behavior, and drug and alcohol abuse. We no longer feel safe walking in the wash alone. This hub is only adding to the problem that already needs to be fixed. Safety is a real concern. We are concerned about how this increased homeless population will affect the value of our homes. I've worked with homelessness for many years, and I've realized this is a real problem, but it shouldn't be passed on to residential and a family neighborhood. We are asking for your help. We want a safe environment for our children and families. We ask that you remove this hub from our neighborhood and place it in a more appropriate location. Everyone deserves to feel safe in their home. And again, that's from Susan and Mark Botker. The next letter is from Jeff Owen. He lives on Hempstead Avenue also. I am writing this letter in objection to the homelessness encampment services. Over years, there's been an increase of homeless people in our community. We have donated and helped as much as possible, but in the past 5 years, our home has been burglarized numerous of times. Our community is now being run with criminal activity because of these encampments. The city of Arcadia has put these services here, but refused to patrol my area. We have a huge county park in the middle of the city. Maybe these services should be held there. That's from Jeff Owen. This next one is from Jean Jarose. She's a 30-year-plus Arcadia resident. You all should really be commended for pursuing this grant money and implementing your program. I look forward to supporting you. The next letter is from Kathleen Wells. Please do everything you can do to help the homeless. You have every support and resource available to me. This next one is from Katie Cabrera. Thank you for putting a resource hub at the Par 3 golf course. These basic services are so hard for so many to find and is a necessity for life. I know this program is receiving a lot of scrutiny. However, there are many of us out there that are in support of this program. This next letter is from Carrie Hake. Carrie Hake lives on Homestead as a homeowner. She's also the girls cross-country coach at Arroyo High School. She regularly sends teenage girls up the wash to run and directly past the HRH. So from Carrie. First, I would like to commend the city for making some efforts to address the real problem of homelessness in our area. However, I have two objections. The first objection is the location of the hub, and the second, that the hub is more of an attractor and enabler of homeless than a rescuer. I'm concerned by the presence of so many homeless and the trash that's continually dumped down our trails. The HRH is attracting more homeless people to our area and simply enabling them to remain living in our wash. I request that the city of Arcadia move the HRH to a more industrial area and less residential area. From Carrie Hake. The next one is from Allison Henry. I submit comment in strong support of this homelessness resource hub in Arcadia. Please help with basic needs and resources for your unhoused neighbors. The next one's from Dina McCall. I support the free resource hub. Next one is from Lee Sebastian. It has been brought to my attention that this wonderful resource may be stopped due to complaints from people of the neighborhood. This is a vital resource that is necessary for the community. Please keep this resource going as it serves everyone in our community. The next letter is from Don Montanez. I am emailing in support of the resource hub in Arcadia. I understand the concerns of the neighbors, but what about those without a home that just need basic needs? There is a pandemic, and without the resources such as these, participants may well venture out into the neighborhood's parks just to meet those needs. With a coordinated effort such as these, there's accountability as far as meeting some of those needs and supporting them with flu shots, showers, laundry, and food. Please reconsider. Next one is from Teresa. I'm writing in full support of the HRH. Each city needs to do their part in addressing homelessness. The Resource Hub is a great innovative solution, and I look forward to this program. This next letter is from Mark McGrail. Although public notice letter had arrived a couple days before this event, there was no open meeting for discussion or input from us. We would have been clear that we would not want this next to our homes. My wife and I are involved in homelessness. My home and those of my neighbors have been greatly affected from this population being so close to us. He again listed many examples in the last 30 years that he has seen through his neighborhood. Placement of the HRH is inappropriate and dangerous to us as residents for these reasons. It was installed without public discussion or input from local residents. It's 12 feet from public crosswalks, 6 feet from a gate used by parents and children. And this is the same path used by high school cross-country runners, both male and female. And the HRH is 60 feet from residential neighborhood. Placing the HRH in our neighborhood is not in the best interest of safety and security for us. But there is open land in a parking lot near the Peck Road Conservation Park. The north end of the parking lot is not bordered by residents, but by businesses. Another option is the property that's formerly was a dairy on Live Oak. Our goal here is not to solve this problem of homelessness, but to state emphatically that we do not want this facility in our neighborhood. All right, I just have a few more, so bear with me, you guys. This one is from Allison Henry. She again sent one that says she is in support of the Resource Hub. The next one is from Ed Ramirez. Please continue to support the valuable resources to our unhoused neighbors. We all pay plenty of taxes to this community. When we give, we will all receive back. Next one is from Sergio Witrago. It is important to have this kind of facilities for those who are less fortunate. With high unemployment and with this pandemic, it is essential that we have this facility open. This next one is from Carol Daly. This program wasn't even operating for 2 weeks, and we had neighbors going door to door circulating a petition, "Not in my backyard." The City of Arcadia and the Council of Government have done something to address our neighbors without homes. How many people have lost their homes in recent months due to illegal evictions? These are basic services that Arcadia is offering for our homeless. The next one is from Connor Quinn. I'm writing to voice my support for the Resource Hub. I strongly believe these facilities provide a much needed service to the community, especially during this difficult time. And my last one is from Robert Zapata. I see this Resource Hub as an essential location for those in need. COVID has impacted a lot of us, and this facility will continue to aid those in need. So those are all of the letters that we have received. And I just try to paraphrase them as best I could so everyone can understand the feedback that we have been getting from the community. But at this time, I'm going to go to the question and answer chat box and ask these questions to the panelists. The first question was asked from Connie Millsap. Does your homelessness count include those living in cars? Are there any considerations for safe parking for those living in their cars?
And Candace, I can go ahead and answer this. So yes, the point in time count or homeless count, for lack of a better term, doesn't count those individuals living in cars, tents, trailers, and the like. And then LASA also has an algorithm that they use. So if you see a tent, of course, we don't have our volunteers approach the tent. They just merely count the tent. So if we count, let's say 5 tents, the algorithm might spit out that there's a total of 12 people living in there. And for safe parking, we had met with Supervisor Barker's office in the past and provided a list of locations we thought that may be suitable for safe parking around the city. Arcadia currently has a no parking restrictions. I think it's from 2 to 6 or 2 to 5 a.m. One of those two. Forgive me for not knowing that off the top of my head. And so we were looking for other alternatives and trying to work with the supervisor's office to figure those out. And that is still in the works. And it's not only Arcadia that's exploring those options, but other cities in the San Gabriel Valley as well. That's always an important resource for us to try to have.
And if I could add just something real quick about safe parking, our valley, the San Gabriel Valley, does not have any ongoing safe parking programs right now. We refer people to Whittier. There are some areas near East LA, Los Angeles. And like we mentioned before, homelessness is a local issue. If you're getting your paycheck, if you're working, if you're helping your kids get to school in Arcadia, you're not going to want to drive to Whittier just to sleep, only to drive back first thing in the morning. So people do end up sleeping on the streets. And one of the big obstacles to safe parking throughout the valley is this same sentiment, the idea that it's a good resource, I just don't want it near me. So people are left to park on the street. And like Sarah mentioned, there are some times that you're not allowed to legally park, which means you can get a ticket. If tickets are unpaid because of shortage of funds, it just creates more legal problems, more headaches, taking your license, taking your vehicle, and then someone that was housed relatively safety in the safety of their car now doesn't have a car because it was impounded. And so that's something that I personally worked with as a caseworker. There's no getting over that that ridiculous fee at the impound lots. I don't know if anyone here has ever had their car impounded, but it's a little ridiculous every day. So we're fighting an uphill battle.
Thank you. The next question, please address why this particular parking lot was selected as the site. Why was the furthest corner of the city selected?
Candice, I too can start answering that question if you'd like. As I mentioned in the presentation, we had thought about many different locations in the city, and we really looked at the data from the point in time count and data that we've heard from individuals in the community about where the complaints are centered. We know we have a lot of individuals who are unhoused in the Live Oak area, and from what we all heard tonight, there's a lot of issues along the Santa Anita Wash Trail. And because it may seem like it's the furthest point of Arcadia, it's actually not. There's some points that are elsewhere, but this just seemed like the most concentrated area where we could do the most good in the least amount of time.
I think, yeah, this is a question that came up a lot in the emails you heard, plus some of the other documents that went to the council. And depending on when you look in the point in time count, that location or that immediate census tract area is either the #1 or the #2 concentration of homelessness every single year in the city of Arcadia. But if you go beyond the corporate boundaries of Arcadia, include the areas that are adjacent to our corporate limits, the unincorporated area, the county, up in the Monrovia area, across the river, all of that, it's by far the highest level of concentration of homeless folks in town. And we hear that on all the emails that you all sent us. You've been feeling the impacts and the negative impacts of homelessness in your neighborhoods, making you feel unsafe for a number of years now, and it's only gotten worse. And we wanted to put the facility in the place where it would do the most good. And we thought because there were so many people that were living on the trail right there nearby, because there were people that were using that as a walkway and an access way through the neighborhoods, we'd be able to reach and connect with the most people possible to help the most people possible. The other thing to keep in mind is we heard one of the suggestions tonight was to put it on the other side of the Peck Lake. That might be a great opportunity, but this grant was kind of a pilot program that we needed to move very quickly on. It only has a few months left in it already. And if we spent months negotiating with the county, negotiating with private property owners on Live Oak, any of those kind of things, we would have wasted opportunities to help people. And we wanted to get this thing up and running near where we could put electrical, near where we could have enough place to work, and on a site that the city owned. And the 3-par golf course site there doesn't negatively impact the golf course. Even though the golf course is busier than it's ever been, we're still able to operate the golf course. And the hub sits there. We're able to also keep a better eye on that area, which you're talking about. There's, trash problems, public nuisance problems. If the city is in that area more often, those problems will be reduced as well. So we saw a lot of positives, even though we may be helping people that are outside of the city boundaries of Arcadia. We saw it as a community-wide problem that we wanted to address, not just within our borders, but all the way around that area. And we thought we were doing the most good possible by picking that specific site.
Thank you.
Thank you, Don.
The next question, will the $20,000 encampment cleanup and $40,000 first responder funds be used only in Arcadia, or will they be spent along the trail?
So those funds are part of the grant funds that we received that I spoke about a little bit earlier, and their primary purpose is to be used within the city of Arcadia limits, but that doesn't mean that some of the encampment cleanup will have to work. Like, we can't just go into the trail and do encampment cleanup there because that's not our jurisdiction. But as I said, we had individuals come over from LA County, and I've already been told that they've been putting in more work orders to clean up the trail and to try to clean up that section more often, and not just adjacent to the hub, but all the way up to Foothill Boulevard to help out neighbors in other parts of the city, because the San Anita Wash Trail, as many of you know, goes all the way through the majority of Arcadia. So they're working to do a lot to clean up that trail, not only in this particular spot, but all the way up. So short answer is yes, it will primarily be within the city boundaries, but we're always looking for collaborations and ways to do things in and around Arcadia, and trying to work with our local entities to provide the best service.
And Sarah, while we're talking about the trail and the encampments, there's a question later in the list that asks about, you know, do we kick people out of their homes? Do we remove the tents while people are in them? No, we absolutely do not. That would be illegal. We wouldn't be allowed to. Sarah mentioned the Boise case. That was basically what they were doing in places like Boise. But when we talk about cleaning up encampments, what happens a lot of times is somebody will leave the area and leave the encampment behind. There'll be trash accumulation. Maybe they're still in the area, but there's no sanitation in the area. So 50 or 100 feet from the campsite, there might be piles of trash and other detritus that we need to deal with. If we ignore it, it just gets worse. So the city and the county will go in and clean those areas up to keep it as nice as possible while we still have to deal with those camps being there and being active.
Thank you, Dominic.
All right, the next question is the lack of affordable housing part of the reason for some of the vulnerable and potential unhoused? I think that's a good question for Union Station.
Yeah, I mean, yes, I think the answer to that is yes. And I know the second part of that question is what can we do to create more affordable housing? And, you know, here's the dilemma is that people don't want homelessness in their communities, but they also don't want forward-moving services in their communities either. And they don't seem to I also want affordable or permanent supportive housing in their communities. And I think as people have been stating, this has to be a local effort. These are the folks who lived in our communities. And I'll say this, you know, the news is that when people move into housing, it's not homeless housing. There's no such thing as homeless housing. You know what happens when people move into their own place? Nothing, really. They just become housed neighbors. The day that they move in, they are no longer homeless. And I'll tell you this because I support supportive housing in my community, just 2 blocks away from where I live. Housing prices go up as a result of creating those types of programs. People don't even know that there are folks who are living there who were formerly formerly homeless. And there's really no issue with folks once they go into housing. That really is the end of it. These are highly successful models. So the way forward is for individual communities to address this problem, tackle it head on with intensive support services of the type that we're describing tonight, and to create affordable housing in your neighborhoods.
And to piggyback on that about what this local community is doing, prior to the pandemic starting, we were working actively with the county District 5 offices to try to identify temporary or permanent shelter, transitional locations, low-cost housing somewhere in the area, because really there's a shelter in Pasadena and there's a shelter in Pomona, and there's not really anything in between as far as transitional housing. And this community has really, any new housing we've built in this community over the last 15 or so years has tended to be towards the top of the market. Either they're luxury single family homes, or even when they're condominiums or apartment buildings, they tend to be $800,000, $1 million sort of units. That's been great for all of our property values, but it doesn't do anything to address the underlying problem of homelessness. So we're all under the obligation to have a housing element which puts forward a plan for addressing all levels of housing in a community. And we're embarking on the next round of the housing element. Literally, as we speak, we're getting off the ground with that. And the next couple months, we'll be having a lot of active conversations about it. What we've done in the last number of years is try to incentivize more people to consider putting in more affordable housing. We'll let you have a few more units. We'll reduce your parking demand. We'll let you go a little bit higher those types of things, to write down the cost of development in Arcadia to encourage developers to put in more affordable units in the nice housing that's already going in. We've also, in the last couple of years, largely in response to state mandates, but we have allowed second units and third units in some cases on single family homes, what we used to refer to as a granny flat, where it's a 1 or 2 bedroom kind of situation where people are able to take advantage of living in Arcadia at a much lower price point than having a 5,000 square foot home or what have you. So we're starting that process, and all of this stuff we're talking about is part of a comprehensive approach to trying to approach all of these issues. And this specific hub is only really one of many items that we're trying to implement to address housing as the crisis exists statewide, really.
Thank you. Okay, the next question. How can 1 day a week be enough?
So 1 day a week has to be enough for operation, even though from what you've heard, it doesn't seem like it's enough to engage with all the individuals that we want to capture down at the resource hub. But because of the restrictive timeline and the restrictiveness of the grant itself, that's all that we could afford to operate the hub staffing wise, is 1 day a week for the next few months.
And one of the things, I guess I'm the guy who keeps adding on to everyone's answers. That grant that we received was an innovation grant intentionally made for people trying new things in the world of homelessness. And so this is what you would call kind of a pilot project, and we have a very specific end date on it. If this turns out to be a great idea and it turns out to be successful, nothing says we can't apply for future grants and make it a more permanent or a more often type of a situation. And also nothing says that we have to leave it at this one specific site. Maybe if it is going to be a more permanent location, we have the ability to take more time to look at other options and all of that. But right now I would really point back to what Sarah said, is we only have a finite amount of dollars and only a finite amount of time. And unfortunately, the amount that we were approved for doesn't give us the amount of funding to be able to keep that open any longer or any more often than it is right now. So it's great that it's worked so well, but we didn't know if we opened the door, if anybody would even show up at the first place.
All right, the next question. Is it true that people are successful if the home they find is in the area that they are familiar with? Like if they lived in Arcadia, they don't want to be housed in Pomona. Is that true?
I can give you some anecdotes just from being a caseworker myself. Some adults that have children, they don't want their kids to experience homelessness, so they ask the kids to stay with their grandparents or their uncles or some family member, while the parent themselves will sleep in a car, stay in a tent. If you find a home for that one individual that is now in Pomona, or it's in Palmdale, or it's in the San Fernando Valley, that means that they're now leaving their children, they're now leaving their parents. Maybe they're taking their parents with them, but they're leaving all of that social support that they had, all of their housed family members and friends and community members that helped them to survive while they're on the street. They're now leaving that place. They also need to find the cheapest place to find food, the best place to do laundry. They need to find new doctors. If they leave the county, that means they have to apply for Medicaid and all those other county benefits in the new county. And not every individual is able to think, I'm going to have to encounter all this stuff when I move to a new location. It's just overwhelming. It's too much to think about. It's easier to just stay where I'm at because at least I know I've got people looking out for me. So it's absolutely essential to keep resources as close to where people are experiencing homelessness as possible. There is a much greater chance for success.
Thank you, Eric. Next question. Please tell me about the outcome measures that you are assessing and how often they're being assessed.
So I could start off with the raw numbers of individuals that we're serving, but I think the true outcomes are hard to be assessed at this early in the game. And because when Union Station and the housing navigators and case managers work with individuals, that's confidential. right, Eric? So you can't share like specifically what types of services you're providing to who, but we can hopefully see at the conclusion of this grant, seeing some long-term outcomes and some more generalizations about who was served and what type of service they were all provided. So mind you, we've only been in operations at the hub for a total of 5 working days so far.
You know, if this is helpful too, I can say that the services that are being offered encompass every single thing that a human being needs in their life to be healthy and to help them move forward and succeed and you know, have sustainability in the outcomes that we're trying to achieve in terms of being permanently housed. So anything that you can think of that an individual might need or might lack in the moment is addressed and worked on throughout the journey forward toward housing.
And if you're talking about metrics, you know, the overall metric we're looking at is that annual point in time count. And it's important to know that that's a very imperfect metric, but it's the only countywide metric we have, and that's actually a nationwide kind of effort. We'd love to move towards a more often count, and we'd love to have a more comprehensive database of the folks that are living on the streets or unhoused in and around Arcadia, and to be able to see how many of our clients are permanently or temporarily moving into housing. So those are things we are tracking and we'll be able to report over time. The other metric that we write down every week is how many people are visiting the Homeless Resource Hub on a weekly basis. And we know that far more people are coming to the hub in that 1 day a week than we're able to reach out to with our homeless coordinator when they're there the other 3 or 4 days a week.
That's absolutely true. And that saves a whole lot of city and county money too, because a lot of the time that we would spend in a car trying to track down a client or making phone calls or outreaching certain areas, asking around if we've seen a person, cut all that out and the clients come straight to us, and it's literally a line sometimes. Client after client after client gets their needs taken care of. We have a game plan, what we're going to work on during the week, what you're going to work on during the week. We're going to meet next week. We'll go from there. So it can help so many more people. We've seen that already just in that 5 weeks or so.
The next question, which governmental entity authorized the hub near the Par 3 golf course? This person just wants to know some names and some titles.
So ultimately that was approved by the city of Arcadia. The city council officially adopted the recommendation from the staff, and most of the people that were involved in this decision are on this Zoom call right now.
Perfect. And there are some comments in the question chat box, but I'm not going to say the comments, just the questions. If you do want to make a comment, you can raise your hand and then we will unmute you at the end. The next question, what is the purpose of ongoing encampment cleanups? If the purpose is to get rid of the encampments, where are the people supposed to go?
And I think Dominic spoke to this one earlier when we were talking. And just to add on to what Candace just mentioned more, we're not going to read the offensive comments in the chat box. So there's been a few offensive comments in the chat box, so we're only going to ask those questions, but not necessarily read the comments.
There's good comments too.
Yes, but we're not reading the offensive ones, but the ones that are appropriate.
But
Okay.
just so everybody's aware, we see all of the comments, and good or bad, the council members and the presenters can see all the comments. But because there's a lot of questions, we want to make sure we're getting to all the questions that are being asked.
And the next question, how often do you clean the encampments and the trails?
That's a great question. It depends on the trail. It would be the best answer for that. So we work with our Public Works Services Department. So if you have a problem on a city-owned trail, then you could submit a work order or get them a buzz, and the city will get on it and try to get the trail cleaned up. If it's trash and not necessarily someone home, then we'll work with that to get that cleaned up as soon as possible. If it's a county property, you can contact the county or you can call myself and I could try to work with my liaisons and get the trail cleaned up as often as possible. I would say I agree there's a plethora of trash, and there always seems to be more trash. So no trail is going to ever be cleaned up as much as we like it. But this is, again, we're trying to be proactive and get some services out to this area that hasn't necessarily been there before. It's been neglected for a long time, and start working with these entities to get this place cleaned up a bit, provide staffing in the area to work with the individuals experiencing homelessness and provide these services.
Yeah, so I've been with the city for coming on 9 years. And what I can tell you is that when I first started with the city, if we could get the county, either the sheriff's department or somebody from the county public works, to come out once a year to tour that PEC facility and clean it and all of that, we were doing pretty good to get any amount of attention on that area. You know, we have been concerned about being the Homeless Resources Hub being a negative attractant, but it's actually been in a lot of ways a positive attractant, in that just right after opening this site, we got a call from the county that said, oh, we need to clean that space more often. We need to be more actively involved in that. And they're volunteering to do more service to that immediate area. We also, as you've heard on earlier in the presentation, a bunch of service providers in the world of homelessness have volunteered and shown up to the site to help try to address the issue, where without us even asking, we're getting organizations and individuals trying to help out to increase the effectiveness of the facility. So I think over time, you'll see us be able to clean that site a little more often. Somebody else asked the question about, you know, why aren't we doing work outside the, you know, the city boundaries? I'm not allowed to, but I can advocate with the county to try to do more. And we're already getting their attention more, and we'll continue to fight for keeping that area as clean as possible. We've also had our public works folks clean the park area, the golf course parking lot and the pathways. We've had them come out far more often since we've opened the hub than we usually would clean it, just out of routine maintenance, because we're so concerned about serving your neighborhood and making sure that we're not being a negative impact on your neighborhood.
And Dominic, just to add on, the county didn't just call, they've also been out to the site twice to look at the trash with me on the trail, on the adjacent Santa Anita Wash Trail. So as you mentioned, if I've already had them out twice in the 5 weeks that we've been there, that's a big improvement to what we've seen maybe once a year in that general area.
Thank you. Will this meeting be available on the city's website?
Yes.
Perfect. What safety measures are put in place to ensure the golf parking lot does not become an attraction point? Why were we not included in the discussion if this is placed in our backyard?
So I could start with the latter question first. We did send out a public notice prior to the Resource Hub opening. And I know a few of you have commented on the short time span that the notice went out to when the actual Resource Hub opened. And I do apologize for that, but I had to receive approval from the City Council prior to sending out the notice. So if I didn't know the project was going to get approved in the first place, then I couldn't send out the letter to tell you that the project was going to be there. And because of the tight time constraints of the grant, it was just like a perfect storm. So I'll take the blame for that and apologize, but everything was just happening so quickly with the grant. And so we did send out the public notice to a 500-foot radius. I only received one call during that time from an individual who had someone parking in front of their house, and they were looking for a safe parking location and wanted to know if the safe parking could be relocated to the Homeless Resource Hub, and unfortunately that wasn't the case. And public safety members, if the hub wasn't there, all these individuals experiencing homelessness would still be in your area. But with the hub in operation, we have a number of staff there. We have 24-hour surveillance cameras. We have staff going down to the site a number of days to clean it up, as Dominic mentioned, to fix something on the site. So actually, even our police department is queued into our surveillance cameras and gets notified if there's any activity around the site. So I would say that on one hand, you could have individuals experiencing homelessness with no supervision, or no oversight, or you have us operating the hub in your neighborhood and have a number of positive interactions where we've been in operation, like we said, for about 5 weeks now and haven't had any issues at the site and are working to clean up the site and monitor the site on an ongoing basis.
Next question. There's a rumor circling that this hub will become a permanent fixture along with long-term housing. What are the plans from the city to create permanent housing by Par 3?
Hey, Sarah, you're speaking, but I'm not hearing you. Is that just me?
Sorry, I'm muted. Thank you, Dominic. I said I could start off by debunking the rumor. This grant, as Dominic mentioned, as I had mentioned, was a pilot program grant for $150,000, and this grant expires in May. There may be future opportunities to do different things. I don't know. We haven't received any additional grant applications or information from neither the county or the COG who are disseminating these grants to us. So I can say to you all right now that we don't have any permanent intent to do anything else with the hub beyond May at this particular point. And if something changed, you guys would all be the first to know, honestly. And the second part of that question, or the first part of that question, Kenneth, sorry.
I'll take that one, Sarah.
Oh, thank you.
So the first part of the question, or the other part of the question, related to long-term housing plans for the Par 3 golf course. And what I can tell you is the city council has given the staff direction to explore possibilities for selling off all or a portion of the golf course site for some kind of future use. Housing may be absolutely one of the things that's considered. City may end up not selling the property, but there will be, you know, if the city sells a property that size and of that importance of the city, it'll be a multi-year sort of process, and there will be several opportunities for public input. Why would the city want to do that? Well, in normal times, golf has kind of reduced in its interest over time. And the money that the city would be able to obtain for selling that site would go a long way to addressing the city's pension problems, which are another, you know, along with homelessness in the state, pensions are another major issue, and the literal, you know, tens to $50 million that the city might be able to achieve in cash influx might make a big difference to the community going forward. So again, tonight I can't tell you what's going to happen on that site because nobody on this call knows exactly what's going to happen, but I'd encourage anybody who lives down there and is interested in that transition, pay attention. We will absolutely notify anybody who lives near the site, but look at our agendas. There will be public discussions, and come down and make your voice heard when we come to talk about that within the next year or so. Those discussions, or even the next 6 months or so, those discussions will begin at the city council level.
Thanks, Dominic. Thanks, Sarah. What is the plan to continue to stay connected with current clients after the hub closes in May?
I could take that.
So I think that might be better answered by Union Station Homeless Services, so since they have the resources to connect to clients in the first place.
Sure. So part of the outreach effort is not just to provide these resources like assistance with an ID and different things like that, lunch and all those like concrete human things. Part of it is engaging with the clients, developing the trust and the rapport that is probably one of the most contentious issues about homeless services. It's the fundamental necessity when it comes to achieving success with a client is having that personal relationship, that rapport. You don't have that happen over 4 weeks or 5 weeks. With that said, we've still had a lot of progress, a lot of success already. But the point is, as we're building that rapport, we're also enrolling our clients onto our caseload so that even if this hub goes away at some point, we'll still have these clients actively enrolled on our caseload. We'll have their contact information, their common hangout areas, their camps, hopefully contact information for family, friends, their doctors, therapists, you know, job coaches, county caseworkers, anything like that. And so we can continue to work with them independently. But like I mentioned before, having this kind of collective all in one location type of resource is just, it makes our job so much easier. and it speeds up the process of getting people off the street and meeting those basic human needs that we're all entitled to.
Thank you. We have a few people that want to speak. So I'm going to change it up a little bit. So I have caller Caesar R. You can go ahead and unmute yourself, Caesar.
Hello, could you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, I just want to thank you guys for the service that you provide from the heart. I'm very proud to be an Arcadia resident now, even more so. And I was kind of upset at the people that disagreed with this. So I just want to say from experience, I live down the street. I walk there twice a day. Since the service has been there, there hasn't been an increase really in homelessness. I walk with my children, with my dogs. And I just want to, these are not homeless. These are people. These are our neighbors, our brothers and sisters. Maybe the neighbors that disagree could do something about it. This is an opportunity, as you guys said, a pilot program, that we can make something even greater than this. Maybe perhaps do it twice a week with the open funds. So we have an opportunity to do something great. So I just want to say, God bless you guys and thank you for the services. And that's it.
Thank you for your comment, Caesar.
Thank you, Caesar.
Welcome.
All right. I also have Olga Howard. Olga, you can go ahead and unmute yourself.
You want to try to
Oh,
unmute?
we can't hear you. So you may want to try the next caller, Candace, and then come back to Olga.
Yep. All right. The next caller, we have Brianna. Brianna, are you there?
Yes.
Perfect. So I was made aware of this Zoom call through a letter. Actually, somebody else mentioned this letter, that this petition that was going around to remove the hub. And I was really kind of fired up and wanted to know what was happening. And I was kind of appalled that this petition was circulated, just because, you know, echoing Caesar, actually, I'm really proud to live here, knowing that we are actually treating unhoused people as people with dignity. And so I just want to thank you all for that. And I actually had a question, and it is, I myself am immunocompromised, and I wanted to know if there's any way that residents could help with the hub or with donations, especially donations with clothes. And that's all I have to say.
Well, first of all, thank you for your comments today, Brianna. And because of COVID, we would probably refrain from having any active volunteers there, just to err on the safe side. But yes, we are accepting donations at all time. We've been currently working with one of the local nonprofits in town who has one of the thrift stores, and that's where we've been getting the clothing for the individuals to provide at the hub. So if you have donations, you can reach out to me and we'll be happy to work something out to pick those up. Or I'd invite anyone on the call, if you'd like to come and take a tour of the hub, we can arrange that. We're there on Thursdays to actually see us up and in operation. So you're welcome to also drop them off at the hub on Thursdays from 9 to 3. I will also add that we will be there tomorrow, but then the following 2 weeks of the holiday, because Thursdays fall on Christmas Eve and New Year's Eve, we are taking those 2 Thursdays off, and we will be back in the new year. So we will be there tomorrow, and so we can work out one way or another, whichever is more convenient for you, and then we can go from there. But thank you.
Thank you.
And Sarah, you mentioned one thing that's especially needed in terms of clothing is larger t-shirts. That's something that.
Yes, thank you, Dominic, for reminding me of that. We have individuals at the hub, and we've been able to get sweaters and jackets.
Question.
About what we've heard, our folks seem to want
Well, first,
large T-shirts to put underneath of those
But I said I was
things.
really appalled.
And if you're done speaking, sorry, Brianna and Caesar, can you please remute yourself so we don't have any conflict? Thank you. And Candace, you want to go to the next call?
Yep. Let's see if Olga's there. If not, we'll move on to more questions. Okay. All right, we'll go to the next question. Sarah, this question's for you, Sarah. Sarah, you said you've been asking for funding for years to address this problem. Why wasn't there congruent research done to secure the locations?
So funding was one issue because it was based on the number of individuals experiencing homelessness. As you may recall, our numbers weren't over 25. So we weren't eligible to receive even funds like this before. The partnership that we have with the city of South Pasadena, was for a housing navigator. So we're currently sharing one of our housing navigators from Union Station to work 2.5 days in Arcadia and the other 2.5 days in South Pasadena. We also received part of that grant, or another part of that grant was for, oh goodness, it was for, sorry, it's at the tip of my tongue, hotel vouchers. But because the hotels in Arcadia, in order to utilize the vouchers, need to have an MOU, and the hotels in Arcadia weren't even willing to do that. We have worked with Union Station to secure some of those locations outside of Arcadia to utilize those, but most of those funds are still sitting in the grant pot and haven't been utilized. And as far as for the new grant, there was a very short application period timeline because it was an innovative program grant. And then once we received the confirmation that we had received the grant, there was a very short amount of time to implement the grant. So unfortunately, there wasn't anything to do on our part about doing anything any quicker than we absolutely positively could.
Sarah, this is April. I'm sorry. I'm just going to have you explain what an MOU is because you used a term that a lot of people won't understand.
Thank you. It's a memorandum of understanding. Thank you, April. Get kind of caught up in our own terminology sometimes, so thank you.
Thank you. The next question, what is the % of positive COVID tests from the HRH?
So we worked with the Department of Health Services to provide those tests last week to individuals, and we're going to have a second location at the Arcadia Transit Plaza on Christmas Eve, actually, from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m., so 9 to 12 noon. And we haven't received any word from the Department of Health Services. They wouldn't tell us who had it, but they might perhaps tell us if an individual at the resource have had it, but we haven't heard anything. So I'm assuming that we had 0 cases of individuals who are positive for COVID.
Perfect. Next question. The flyer states that this program ends in May. For 97% of residents who want this out of our family neighborhood, can the city commit to moving this to a better, more commercial location away from us tonight?
So again, I guess we would start off with, we're not even sure if there's going to be funding past May. And if there is some type of funding for another grant or to extend this grant, then absolutely we will be exploring all the options, just as we've gone through the first time for this pilot program, to see if there's another location that perhaps is more suitable, if this location has been doing the work and seems to be a good location or not. So I guess we have to wait and see if more monies are going to be released, and then what are the restrictions on those monies, and we'll proceed from there. But it will be a public process just as it was in the past, and we'll look forward to crossing that bridge as we come to it.
Hey, Dominic, I think you're on mute still.
Thank you. We will commit to notifying you all if it's going to continue beyond May for any reason, or if we're going to re-up the grant at a later time, sometime after May. We will absolutely notify the neighborhood before doing that and give everybody an opportunity to comment on it at that time.
Thank you. How can we as Arcadia residents become involved and support you?
I think if you're on this call, you're already becoming involved, so we could start by thanking you for that. If you're passionate about working with homeless or helping out with individuals experiencing homelessness, there's a few ways that you can help me personally. We developed a 5-year plan for homelessness a few years ago, and with that we have 2 different community groups that we work with. We have a community stakeholder group that we work with, and I know some of those individuals are attending this presentation or this call tonight. And because of COVID, we've been meeting a bit less, but we would get together probably on a quarterly basis and talk about what we're doing and where we're going and how things are progressing with the different grants and different projects. And for those individuals who are a community stakeholder, they can tell you that the progress that we made from even a 1.5 years ago to now, it's just been moving at lightning speed once these funds started opening up. So if you're interested in those opportunities, you can let me know, and I'll be happy to work with you to get you signed up on those lists. Otherwise, I would just say, do what you're doing, be vigilant in your community, talk about what's passionate to you, and be involved one way or another for what you think is best.
The next question, do any of you live in the community surrounding the resource hub?
I think the basic answer to that is no. We do have a council member that lives in a district that encompasses the golf course that's fairly near. That area is within walking distance of the golf course, but nobody on this call happens to. But I think I understand the bigger question is, do we understand the impacts to the neighborhood? I think that's buried in that question. And we absolutely get the concerns that you all have, the issues you've been dealing with over the years. And that again is why we picked this site first and foremost, is we think you all have been dealing with the largest negative impacts associated with homelessness. So we're trying to create the most good we can out of placing this site in this location.
It seemed like the question might have been directed at city staff, but I could say I'm a lifelong San Gabriel Valley resident. I was born, raised, lived, worked, and played in almost every city in the San Gabriel Valley. Born and raised in Temple City, so Arcadia is essentially my home. I still work and live in the San Gabriel Valley, and I'm deeply, absolutely invested in the welfare and the well-being of the entire region. So my heart's in it, and I know that everyone from my agency feels the same way. And from what I've heard from the call tonight, the city of Arcadia feels the same.
The next question is for Eric from Union Station. How do you keep a client accountable?
Nothing exists in a vacuum. You can't talk to a person without understanding their context, who they are, where they're coming from, and what they've experienced. And that doesn't go for our unhoused neighbors only. It goes for everyone, yourself included, myself included. The reason one of us might be short with a family member and might lash out or be impatient is it's complicated. There's always multiple reasons why we do different things. So we provide a trauma-informed approach, what I mentioned in our slide earlier. That just means being aware of where the person is coming from. If they have a history of trauma, a history of physical abuse themselves, sexual abuse, emotional abuse, financial abuse, they're going to react differently to certain situations than people that don't have that trauma. So that's the mentality that we use. Every situation is different. So how we keep clients accountable is going to differ from client to client. And we really can't say we have a blanket approach because we're individuals, every single one of us. Our unhoused and housed neighbors are individuals.
I'm just going to add really, really quick that, when you live outside, when you sleep outside, if you're sleeping in dirt or a bush or under a car or in a car, it's really tough to, I mean, I have my own foundation and my place that I operate from, you know, which is like my home. And it's not always easy to show up to meetings or appointments anyway under the best circumstances. But you take someone who's experiencing a real trauma of homelessness and expect promptness and the ability to always show up in light of someone's living conditions. It's really tough. That's why we talk about housing being the solution to all of those things, you know, that people get better and they are able to show up in ways that they can't when they're sleeping, say, in the dirt or on the side of a freeway embankment. Housing provides a level of stability from which is kind of the jumping off point for all other things.
Where is the Christmas Eve COVID testing?
Right.
And
Candace, you skipped a question.
I'm gonna go back to it. You go ahead.
So go ahead and read the question that you skipped, because I'll answer it.
All right. Let me know when any of you on this panel have had to clean up human fecal matter from your yard because of people assessing the HRH are too drunk to make it to the bathroom.
So, Mr. Ferraro, my name is April Verlato. I'm a city council member. And although I have not had to clean up fecal matter down by the HRH, and I haven't had to do it because I'm assuming, I don't know if they were drunk or not, but I have had to clean up fecal matter. So I'm quite aware of what homeless impacts can mean. And I've done it on more than one occasion. So yes, I understand what it's like to have to clean up human feces and urine.
Thank you. Sarah, do you want to answer about the Christmas Eve COVID testing?
Yes, thank you for going back to that question. So again, we're working with the Department of Health Services. They are in charge of the COVID outreach for Service Provider Area 3, which is our service provider area. And they are doing the COVID testing for the second date in Arcadia at the Arcadia Transit Plaza on Christmas Eve from 9 a.m. to noon. And you don't have to be homeless to take that test. You could be anyone. We're hoping to capture some individuals who perhaps come off of the transit or the train, and individuals in the downtown area. We've also notified them through the Downtown Business Association, or residents like you and I can go there and get tested. And Candace, from your experience with it at the Homeless Resource Hub last week, they said it takes about 48 hours, if I'm correct, to get the results? Okay.
Correct.
You should get the results in about 48 hours after you take the test. Yep. So Christmas Eve, Transit Plaza, 9 to noon.
Perfect.
Free.
Thank you. Next question. Is the city aware that the purpose of the wash is to provide drinking water through percolation, and that by supporting illegal camping through services affects our drinking water and the water we bathe and the dishes we wash?
So one of the key words in that sentence is illegal camping. And unfortunately, one thing we have to keep in mind is that it's legal camping. The federal government, the Supreme Court has decided that if people don't have an otherwise location to camp, they're involuntarily camping is the official term of it. We have to allow them to have some sort of a space. But absolutely, we're concerned about the quality of the water. We're absolutely concerned about any of those impacts of any trash or anything else that may make its way into any of our bodies of water, but especially Peck Lake. I will tell you, we have multiple of our city's water pumps right in that area, up to and including the parking lot of the Par 3 golf course. They are our best wells in the city. They are among the cleanest wells in the city. But we're super protective of all of that. And I get the point of what you're going with the question. We want to keep that area as clean as possible because we want to make sure that your drinking water remains clean and potable. We will absolutely always test it. We'll treat it if it's not the quality that it should be when it's coming out of the ground. But again, our goal is your goal, which is we want to get rid of homelessness. We want to get rid of the people that are defecating in on the walkways and in the bushes and next to the lake. And the best way to do that, we can't arrest our way out of it. Like we said at the beginning of this call, we have to connect people to services that eventually get them into their own homes, where they do have the same access to comfort services that you do. Right now, nobody wants to defecate on the street. They do that because they end up in a position that they have to. And we traditionally, as a city of Arcadia, have, like I said, we took an aggressive approach. Somebody mentioned, I think it was Mr. H on one of the comments we passed, that we have a reputation for being tough on homelessness in the city of Arcadia. That was our mission. We sent out our police officers to roust the homeless and move them along. We would get civil rights violations, lawsuits left and right if we took that approach in 2020. So we have to take a more compassionate approach. It's frankly the more Christian approach, it's the more Muslim approach, it's the more Jewish approach, it's the more whatever religion you may happen to follow. Compassion is almost always embedded in any one of those religions. So there are good reasons to do it, but more importantly, if you take a compassionate approach and you provide services to people where they can permanently get off the streets, they will end up in a situation where they are permanently off the street. If I roust people and move them to the next city, I may be successful at moving the problem out of my own community, but all I've done is push it towards the next community to the north, south, east, or west. And if we go back to what I said a couple times on this call, the neighborhood that we're hearing the most from in the Homeless Resources Hub is not in the corporate boundaries of Arcadia. In the old days, we wouldn't have cared about that. Move them to the county unincorporated area. As long as they're not in my town, I don't care. I care about all the neighbors around us, and we want to make sure we're addressing this problem for all of the San Gabriel Valley, not just, you know, one specific part of Arcadia. So, Mr. McGrail, I get your concerns, I get your point, but we're doing what we can to keep the area as clean and safe as possible. And the way we see that being most effective is by providing services to get people out of the area eventually and start them on the path of that permanent housing. And unfortunately, it's going to take a while. It's not one meeting with somebody to get them off the streets. A lot of times it's a month or year long or years long kind of process, and there's fits and starts. But our goal is the same. We want everybody to get out of that area eventually.
All right, we have 2 more questions in the chat. Does the city realize that placing the HRH in our neighborhood, you are affecting our property values in a negative way?
I would not accept that as a question. I would say that we're trying to, your property values are being negatively affected by us doing nothing. The years where we haven't addressed the issue, where the problems have proliferated, your neighbors have had to deal with defecations on the lawn, petty thefts, thefts of bicycles, those types of things that were in all of your emails to us. Those things are things that crime rates and all of that negatively impact the property values. If I can clean up the area, if I can have a positive resource for people to start getting out of the neighborhood from living on the streets, your property values will get stronger. They won't get weaker.
Thank you. And the last question, is it cost effective to provide portable toilets in areas where we have high homeless numbers?
No, but
And I
it's
can
the
answer
right
that.
thing to do. So,
And
sorry,
I can
Sarah.
answer that question. That's okay. Thank you. We're both excited to answer this question, I guess. At the beginning of COVID, one of the other very, very short-term grants that was put out there was a hygiene grant. And it was only available for about a period of 4 months. And we applied for that grant as well and received that grant, received nearly $10,000 to provide portable restrooms and hand washing stations at a number of locations throughout the city. So we put one at the Transit Plaza, we put one over near Eisenhower Park off of the Wash because construction was currently being done there. We put one at the library, and then we put one down in this general area as well. So we put 4 of those up, but that was a short-term grant. It lasted for about 4 or 5 months, and we received that for $10,000. Since that concluded, we opened up the restrooms at Eisenhower Park. So the park construction has been completed, and so there's 3 functioning restrooms there. We work with LA County to get the restrooms opened back up at Arcadia County Park. And now we have the restroom here at, or the porta potty here at the Resource Hub. So hopefully those are engaging individuals, giving them a place to utilize facilities again. But if we hear of other areas that are in need of those, then that's definitely something that we can explore.
Thank you. And earlier we were trying to have Olga speak, but she did message and she said she really likes the idea of this hub, but her question is just safety in general. But I think, Sarah, during your presentation, you addressed the safety issues and our 24-hour surveillance. So there's if you are on the computer.
One more thing, Dennis.
Huh?
I think Dominic had one more thing to add.
There. I just wanted to add, based on the safety, anybody in that neighborhood, you know, you can always call 911 if it's an emergency situation. But I'm going to give you a number, 626-574-5123. Once again, 626-574-5123. And that is our non-emergency 24/7 police line. It goes right to our police dispatchers. Same people that answer the 911 calls, but they go directly. If you're outside of the city of Arcadia and you dial 911, it probably goes to the county sheriff instead of the city of Arcadia. So if you're living outside of Arcadia, you have a concern about the golf course, 574-5123. Call us. If you see anything that doesn't look right, anything that doesn't act right, you know, somebody had a question about the graffiti. If you happen to see somebody doing that, give us a call and we will come out and respond. I think I gave you the right number, 574-5123. Did I say that correctly?
All right. Susan, if you want to unmute yourself, we'll take your public comment.
Yes, my question was also more of a safety issue. I care about the homeless. I've worked with the homeless for years. And so one of my concerns is that most of the times, in every place that I've worked, it's always been in more of a industrial area rather than a residential area. And with what I'm seeing, and I totally agree, I've had family members that have been in homeless situations. I know the shame that's associated with it, and I have a heart to help the people. And I think most of the neighbors in this community do, because we have certain homeless in the wash that have been there for 20 years. We know them by name, and they are choosing to remain there. What I found in some of my questions is I know there's many, when I worked with the homeless, that they were without jobs, and their prayer when you went to pray with them was they wanted a job. But one of the things that we're seeing when you have a hub that is in a residential community is that isn't the homeless that we're seeing more and more in our community day by day, because I understand that there are resources that are giving the homeless flyers to this area. What we're seeing is more that are needing assistance because they have mental health issues. They have addiction issues, because we're seeing more aggressive homeless in our area at this time. I back up the street to the golf course, and I have 8 grandchildren. I've got children, and I don't even walk behind there right now with my 6-year-old and 2.5-year-old granddaughter, because I just feel it's more dangerous. You're trapped on that road with 2 walls. We see grown men drop their pants to, use that as a restroom, not caring whether their children are not there. We've been in this neighborhood for 30 years. And our neighbors, we have elderly neighbors that live alone. We have single moms that have kids. 2:30 the other night, I heard somebody screaming bloody murder, and I literally thought somebody might be stabbed, and went out back, and it was just somebody that it's just sad. There's a lot going on out there, and it's just half of them are half dressed, and walking down the street. And so we are concerned about safety. My question would be, is I've worked with homeless hubs for over the years, and there's others in the area. I know of two in particular, that one has been in existence since 1996, the other 2004. And I'm wondering about using this money to help those that are set up. They've been in existence for a long time, because part of my concern is for the safety of our neighbors. We are seeing, like I said, much more aggressive. They'll irritate the dogs. My mom, an 85-year-old, lives with me, and they throw food over the fence, and she said, please don't do that. It's making my little dog sick. And the woman literally threw cat food at my mother. And so we are seeing more of the aggressive people that really need some help. And so my question is, if we aren't going to be able to relocate and we're only going to stay here temporarily, it's going to add to our area. And when you pull out, then we're left with a greater problem. But if we would maybe partner with another organization that is already set up to give housing to the homeless, that feeds them. I know some of these kitchens over here, they're open Monday through Friday, and they'll give food. I work there to help people to learn how to job interview again. But I think that way, those that are needing some help with mental health issues, those that are in addictive and more aggressive behaviors, that they would be helped better and long-term after 6 months. And they have all the resources there, where we're a beginning facility. They're already set up. And so I'm wondering if that would be better, rather than to sandwich the hub in between two neighborhoods. We have the elementary school. We have the high school cross-country team that runs down that trail. And when you're seeing more aggressive addicts that, you know, they need money, you know, they're not right in their right mind. And then you have that cross-country track team that starts off as a group, but it ends up where you see isolated young girls and young men running. It is a more dangerous situation. I know we always had police or security, and I'm sure you have security in your facility over here, because sometimes, you know, things will escalate. But when you all pull out on Thursday, where is our security then from Friday to Wednesday? And we just want our kids to be safe. We want our neighbors to be safe, our moms to be safe, and we want the homeless to be safe too. So that would be my question, and my suggestion is that's why they aren't in residential areas usually, because it does cause a problem with safety as well. And like I said, I'm in the ministry. I have a heart for this and I do this, but I'm just wondering if this is the best solution, because when you leave, we still have the problem. And then we have increased problem because more people have been coming to our area. And then because they can house in the wash, they will. So that's my concern.
Perfect.
And I feel we want to be good neighbors.
Susan, sorry to interrupt you, Susan. There's a few other people that have questions, and we just want to make sure we get through everybody. I know everyone is.
Go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. Does anybody want to address her concern, questions?
Sure, I can start off. The location was chosen because there's a problem there, and the problem is going to exist there regardless if we have the resource hub there or not. We've heard that time and time again here this evening, and so we can proactively try to address the problem and try to connect some of those individuals to services and work with them. Or we can have no staff there, no cameras there, no security there, And you're left to your own devices and resources, as you have been for a number of years, to just call 911. And I would go back to the comments where Eric and Sean had made earlier, where these are individuals coming to the resource hub. We're not seeing 150 people a day. We're seeing 20 to 25 people per event at the hub. So we're not getting people from all over. These are people in the surrounding area from Live Oak, from the Wash, who are going to the hub, who are getting these resources. And if you're ever, as Dominic mentioned, if you're ever feeling safe, please call 911.
All right, we have Robert. Robert, if you want to unmute yourself.
Hi, Robert Hoyt. Thank you for this presentation. It was very interesting and very helpful. I lived here on Hempstead for 37 years, and Caesar made comment about being here, and I've walked and run that Peck Lake for years. And I am just so grateful that Arcadia was able to have this opportunity to reach out to the homeless. I've worked with several of them in that area, and I'm limited in the skills that I have, as Eric knows, to reach those people. And I'm thankful for you guys doing this. And I appreciate you taking all the comments and questions and answering them well. So thank you, guys.
Thank you, Mr. Hoyt. And let's see. In the question, I have Chris Farrow, who has been kind of chatting in the question. But Chris, would you like to speak for a few minutes? If you do, you can raise your hand. If not, the last question would be, this question's for Sarah. Sarah, if we do receive additional funding, how will neighbors be notified?
Sorry about that, I needed to unmute. If we do receive additional funding, we will go through some of the same measures, obviously, that we did with this time around and for even this town hall meeting. So we would post the information on the city's website. We would do direct mailing as we did with the past. And we would go back to the city council to see if they had approvals, and it would also be provided then. And now we have a greater outreach bank. And so I'm sure the word would get out a lot faster than it did this last time as well.
Perfect, thank you.
Can we just respond briefly to one of the things that Chris mentioned? He mentioned, I want to say, it was something about the requirement to be sober first before receiving services. Just in a nutshell, that was the old philosophy for homeless services back in the day, and it didn't work. That's why the new philosophy is housing first. You get someone housed and you take care of their basic needs. You know, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, if you guys remember that from psychology class. Take care of the basic needs first, and then you just climb the ladder from there, taking care of the trauma that might lead someone to self-medicate. Not having a social support system, not having strong ties to family, friends, to faith groups. You can't take care of any of those things if you don't have a roof over your head, because every day your whole focus is going to be on survival. So long story short, that method has been tried. It didn't work. This method is, I want to say like 30, Sean probably knows more than me, 30 plus more percentage effective than the previous method. So I don't know if you want to add any more details, Sean.
Yeah, no, I think you said it. I think those kinds of mandates or compliance models were what grew the homeless population that we see today. And it's this change in direction, addressing people with dignity, giving them homes, and then, as Eric said, working on all of those attendant issues that really spell success. We know that to be true. We know that this works. Again, we've done more to house homeless folks in the past few years than in the 40 years preceding this, based upon these evidence-based, really effective best practices.
And I think the key is evidence-based. It's all data-driven. That's why I always hesitate when someone uses language that kind of makes a human being sound like an animal, using language that you would use on a dog. even language like being aggressive. You know, you take one or two bad situations and overgeneralize to everybody. That does a lot of harm to, I'll give you an example of some of my clients. Older senior couple, never touched alcohol, never touched drugs. Their only flaw was that they took care of their aging parents as they were dying. And as they were doing that, it put them in a financial hole so that when their parents did die, they couldn't pay their rent. The landlord was a predatory landlord situation, kicked them out of their situation, out of their unit, and they had been on the streets for a year or so before we interacted with them. Those are the people, these are the human stories that we encounter. It's everyone like us, every single person on this call, whether you're a caller or panel, you're just a couple life situations away from being in the same situation. I'm sure some people on this panel have actually experienced that themselves, and we want to know that we as humans are going to reach out to each other as humans and not pass judgment, but just help satisfy those basic needs. So we are here to support the community and to meet the community's needs. We do definitely hear the safety concerns, the concerns about individuals who might be experiencing mental health crises, and we're the people who are the best to respond to that. We've got relationships already with Department of Mental Health, Health Services. Our staff ourselves are trained in de-escalation tactics, crisis mediation, things like that. So this is the effective approach. This is what's going to help clean up the neighborhood, essentially.
So, excellent answer, Eric. Getting back to the notification question, and I see there's a follow-up on the notification. One of the things we can do is set up an email group that we can have people send us their emails. Sarah, maybe you can give a standard one for tonight that people can send an email if they want to stay involved, and we can make sure they get their names on a list. But anything to do with the Homeless Hub, whether it's you want to get involved to volunteer, whether it's you want to know if we're going to extend it or move it or any of those things, before any meetings we had about it, we'd make sure that we notified that email group, and we can keep you engaged and involved in what's going on. So we can set up a clean and easy email in a day or two, but if you want to give us something that people can follow up with, Sarah.
Emily, let me ask you a question real quick. She's helping manage this meeting from your side. Do we have emails from the individuals who have Zoomed in, perhaps? Maybe we can already establish that list from folks being on here. If not, my email is my first letter, which is S, and my last name, which is a bit difficult, so bear with me. It's S like a ship, OMOGYI at Arcadia. I was ca.gov. Sorry, they changed it.
Sarah, I'm typing it into the chat so folks can get that too.
Okay, thanks, Sam.
Thank you.
So we
thanks,
can get that together, and if you email me, then we can get you on the list, and we can see if we can pull emails off of this as well.
Right. And Sarah, I'm going to turn it back over to you. It doesn't look like we have any more people that want to make any public comments or questions. Thank you, everyone.
So we haven't actually gone to the city council. The city council, you've sat through all of this. We haven't turned the microphone to you. Do you have any anything you'd like to share, anything you'd like to say, any reactions to what you heard tonight? Absolutely no requirement, but we just haven't opened the microphones for you tonight.
Hi, this is Paul Chang. I just wanted to thank Sarah for all of her work, as well as her department. I actually only live 7 minutes away from the Resource Hub. And I've actually experienced during my time in Arcadia, a person, when I woke up, I came out of my home and that person was sleeping outside my door, and it scared the living daylights out of me. So I take a personal and vested interest about property value. I do want to say this, this is not a emotional story, socialist, communist versus heartless people. It's not these polarized groups. I actually believe it's people, even people that aren't in supportive of the hub, that really care about homeless people. And I would say that Arcadia has always been very forward thinking. Instead of not having reserves, Arcadia early on decided, you know, we got to save money for a rainy day. Arcadia was one of the few cities that passed Measure A. You know, when other cities kind of said, well, we don't know if we can be able to do it, Arcadia did it. Arcadia is one of the few cities that has a commission that audits the books of Arcadia. This is all very forward thinking. But many times in forward thinking, we don't necessarily always know exactly what the proper or exact outcome is going to be. And that's really what the hub is, that we are a forward thinking city. That area of District 5, and I want to thank everybody, April Verlotto from District 1, Tom Beck from District 2, Shote from District 3, because, you know, apart from District 5, District 4, that's bordering me. I'm 7 minutes away from the hub. And so I really want to thank the city council from the different districts that have come. And today is a voluntary meeting, meaning that we receive one letter from a concerned resident, and all of city council and all the city staff said, we need to come together and we need to share this information for everybody. But getting back to the point of being very forward thinking is, you know, Arcadia has always been in the forefront of trying to get things done. And that specific area around Par 3, that has always been an area where there are homeless people in the wash. And so therefore, we're spending $2,700 a day, $2,700 a day. Now, you have to understand, property taxes on a $2 million home, we get $1,200 a year. 1 year, we only get $1,200. And yet we were spending $2,700 to police homelessness in our city. So there's an opportunity, and I think it's so amazing that Sarah and Dominic and everybody, through guidance of city council, went out and said, you know what? Let's get this grant money. Let's try to take a stab at it. Is it perfect? It's never perfect. And we appreciate so many people that have come and spoken today. You know, particularly Susan, there's just something about her. You know, I don't know if she's still on the line, but just the fact that she's a person of faith, the fact that she has an 85-year-old mom, and the fact that she's worked with homeless people, and the fact that she talked about shame. That's all of us. That's all of Arcadia. I mean, she represents all of us. You know, we are all in this together, and we care very much about homelessness, and we absolutely care about our home prices, and we absolutely care about our safety. So we wanted to say that this was a project for us to get things done. It's going to be ending around March, April, and then we're going to reevaluate it again. And I can guarantee all the residents that have come, and even the residents that didn't come, we are going to do our best to address all of the issues and really make Arcadia better. I mean, I personally, again, went down. I went there when the hub went up. I couldn't really tell what was going on. I went there today, and I'm going to go there on Thursday because it's open. You know, that's how much all the city council cares, and that's how much the city cares. And the city cares enough to not ignore this issue. And so we appreciate all the residents that have been patient. You know, thank you so much. And again, new and innovative ideas are never going to be easy. But I can be able to tell you, you live in Arcadia because Arcadia has always been in the forefront of wanting to do things better. And we want to address the issue of homelessness. So thank you so much for the opportunity to speak.
If there's no other city council members that would like to provide comments, or April?
Yeah, I'll go ahead. I guess, you know, all I can say is I have been meeting with Sarah monthly for, gosh, what is it? Like
a long time.
2 years now. Specifically about homelessness. You know, I'm very passionate about trying to help find ways to alleviate what is happening, because all I see is year after year, homelessness is getting worse, and it's becoming a bigger and bigger problem. You know, it's for me, I'm looking for results when we do these kinds of projects. And my result, of course, is I'm looking to see, are we getting people placed in homes? So, you know, that's what I'm looking for with this resource hub. It might be a big goal or a lofty goal in such a short period of time, but you know, if you think that I don't know or understand the impact of homelessness, I have a home in Arcadia. I have an office in Arcadia as well on Huntington Drive, and I am directly impacted by homelessness. Like I said before, I see it and live it on a daily basis. So I know and understand and can completely empathize with residents who feel negatively impacted by homelessness. So thank you. Thank you. And thank you everybody for coming tonight. It really does help us create better programming, better solutions for homelessness, having all of this input and feedback. So thank you so much for taking the time to be here tonight.
Is there any other comments by City Council members?
Okay, Sarah.
Yes, Mayor Pro
First of
Tem.
all, I'd like to thank the work you have done, Dominic and Candice, all the department doing awesome job. Like Paul said, this is something new, so we don't know it's going to be good or going to be bad, but we need to give it a try to help the homeless people, especially this holiday season. Okay, and so I'd like to thank everybody for their patience and participate in this town hall meeting. So with that, I'd like to wish everybody a happy holiday and stay safe.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem.
Sarah, since I'll just say a couple comments. I participated tonight to learn more from the residents, and it's been very helpful. I did have a conversation with Susan Botker earlier today, and like Paul, I walked the whole area, the neighborhood, down the wash, everything to walk around and get firsthand to understand the problem. And I just want to assure everyone that spoke tonight or sent comments that we're listening to you, and we're trying to solve the problem as best we can. It's a complex problem, and I hope you see our good faith that we're working on the problem and doing our best to solve it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Beck.
Sorry, Sarah, I just wanted to make a comment. I see that there's another comment in the questions about the city's notification, and all I can say is we'll commit to you going forward. We'll keep you deeply involved in all the decisions that are related to the homeless hub and that area down by the golf course. And again, use that email ssamaji@arcadiaca.gov. It's in the chat. Send it to Sarah to get on the list, and stay involved from this point forward, and you'll know everything that's happening down there.
Thank you, Dominic. And I just wanted to also extend my thanks and gratitude for all of you for spending your evening with us. I know everyone's time is valuable, especially now during holidays, but I appreciate your passion for this issue on one side of the fence or the other. And I just wanted to reiterate again, we are listening to you, we do hear you, and we want to continue to work with you in the future. And I'd like to also reiterate just happy holidays to everyone. And if there's no further questions, I'd like to officially close the meeting at 8:36 p.m. We'll adjourn this meeting. Thank you. Take care.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Bye. Thank you.